Today I've got Mark Freeman on the show with me. He's currently a senior data scientist with Humu, while also operating some impressive entrepreneurial ventures in parallel. As you'll see, he's got this incredible drive for solving large-scale societal problems. In this episode, we'll cover a few things, including, number one, atypical pathways to succeed in data science careers. Number two, social media strategy for developing community and opening doors. And number three, what it's like to place multiple career bets in tandem while staying fluid with the overall path. So much goodness in this one. Please enjoy. Welcome to the Rising Digital Leaders Show. I am your host, Matthew Doan. Today's organizations are powered by digital capabilities, cloud, data science, cybersecurity, and much more. To be competitive, we must have tech-savvy leaders steering the ships. But these people don't come out of thin air. We must develop them. This show is for the technical experts of the world, those brave souls that feel unheard and lost in the crowd, but know they were born to lead. We need you to rise, to become impactful digital leaders. In these episodes, we help you undergo a self-transformation, developing the mindset and skill set that'll massively enhance your abilities, influence, and career potential. We take a different approach, pulling in lessons from philosophy, psychology, neuroscience, and history to enrich the professional and personal aspects of your life. Thank you for your time. Please subscribe to the Rising Digital Leaders Show. Now, let's dig in. Hey, Mark, welcome to the Rising Digital Leaders Show.
Hey, thanks for having me. Super excited to be here.
Oh, man, we're going to have a lot of fun today. So I've got to ask you, you've teed this up on LinkedIn, so it was like a volleyball, and I'm going to hit it right now. You've talked about your love of pinball. And pinball, if people have played it, it's full of noise and lights and distractions, almost like a modern organization, right?
Yep.
But you said the key to all this for you is this idea of the dead flip. What is the dead flip, and what does it mean for you in your life?
Definitely. So I love that you brought in pinball, which is like my side passion outside of data. But essentially, as you said, like if you play pinball, most people have, there's a lot of lights, it's flashing. The goal of the machine is to get the ball down the gutter and, you lose, right? And so it's trying to make you go as fast as possible. And so you use the dead flip where you have little flippers and you essentially catch the ball and stop it. And so therefore, you're no longer moving fast and being reactionary. You're able to hold it and think, all right, which lane do I want to hit? Which target do I want to go after? And then you can line up your shot. And actually, that's how you get the higher scores for that. And, in my post, I made this kind of parallel between my career, especially in data, and building technology, is that there's this pressure to move fast, especially being in a startup. You have to go, but there's this trap of if you move too fast, you miss on delivering what's actually really valuable. And so doing the dead flip in your own kind of work, taking a quick step back, doesn't mean fully stopping because you're still analyzing things, right? But taking a step back, lining up your shot, and then really going after it intentionally, it really sets you up for success.
I love that analogy. I mean, it's the idea of the strategic pause, that sometimes you're hustling, you're moving so fast in the course of a job or even in life, and you don't know exactly your aim or if there could be a better direction. But if you can find ways to do a quick timeout, whether it's like a quick meditation for your personal life or step back after a hard meeting and discuss with your team what the next strategy is. Is this really where we want to go? Have we looked at the trade-offs, the pros and cons and all of that? That's a really smart move that I could see applying in every asset, both, work and life.
Definitely.
Cool. Thanks for sharing. So I'd love to just make sure our audience understands your journey. It's always helpful when I have one of the great guests on my podcast. So I'd love to start with a couple questions there. If you could go way back in early life for me first, I want to understand your professional journey, but are there any sort of foundational lessons you learned early in life that stuck with you today?
Yes, 100%. My dad and I used to play chess all the time. And so it sounds funny, but he said if I ever beat him, he'll take me to Chuck E. Cheese. So this is I'm very young at this age, right? I never beat him, but he was really good. But what that taught me was he was always like, you got to think 10 moves ahead. What's your move? What's your opponent's move? And what does that mean for each step? So playing chess in my early life really taught me to think forward a lot. And so in my life, I do a lot of like planning, but more so strategic planning of like, if I do this, what's this other reaction? What does this mean for my environment, for others around me? And that's played a pivotal role because now I set goals not for like the next month. I set goals like these very long-term goals, and I'm okay if they're completely wrong. But because I set these long-term goals, I'm very intentional about the things I want to do. The type of jobs I want to take, the type of side projects I want to do, or things I want to learn. And as I'll tell you about my career journey later on, I was completely off what my end goal was, but it's still built up to this larger kind of picture.
Yeah. I love that. Chess analogies always work so well in life. So give me this. Okay, you got that chess background. You're thinking about the long term, but you're open to pivoting. How does this play out in your professional journey?
Definitely. So for me, I thought I was going to be a doctor. In undergrad, I was studying sociology, but I took all my pre-med courses. I was planning on taking the MCAT, and I did my master's in community health prevention research at Stanford Med, specifically to make me more competitive for when I applied to medical school. And so I'm in the middle of the school of medicine. My classes are cross-listed medical students. I'm basically there getting a taste of it. And I realized, and keep in mind, I devoted like probably 6 years of my life to this goal. All these classes, all these seminars, all these mentors and whatnot. And I realized I hated it. I did not like being in academia. And I ultimately realized I wasn't really passionate about being a doctor. I loved healthcare and I loved being in that space, but it just wasn't for me anymore. And that was a really big realization. I'm like, I don't want this for my career. And so, at the core of it is that I wanted to make a difference and improve people's lives, especially marginalized communities. And I had this passion for science, and I really felt as if medicine was the way to do that. And being at Stanford and finally being open with myself and being like, actually, this isn't my real passion, but I still want to solve similar problems. And being exposed to startups and tech and data science while being at Stanford, I realized I'm like, oh, here's this other avenue to really scale up my impact. And so I tried it out. I took as many stats courses I can get into. I learned how to code a little bit, and I just became obsessed. I just couldn't get enough of it. Like, I had my grad school, and I was doing like 20 hours of learning statistics and coding on the side, and I just kept it up. And I ultimately turned that into a career in data science, and I'm just so beyond passionate about it. It doesn't really feel like work to me. I just turned a hobby into a career.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. So you had this eureka moment where this is not the path for me anymore. You probably had to wrestle with that emotionally and maybe have to let some people around you down with that at the same time. But how did data science in particularly draw you in? So you're in, I get it, the Bay Area, you have that tech hub that's pulling you in, but what about data science was so attractive?
Definitely. And this goes back to like building up skills that even though I pivoted, it still reached this bigger goal of like, trying to solve these large societal problems. And for me, the way I saw it was, my background in sociology, so I really think about like oppression and like the ways that people are marginalized, and a lot of ways of like systems really perpetuate that. And so like, how can we attack systematic problems? And one systematic problem I saw was collection of data and processing of data. There's all these innovations happening in tech and machine learning, but the question I always ask is for who? A lot of people, especially marginalized individuals, for healthcare data are not being collected simply because they're not within the healthcare system. They don't have access. They may not have health insurance or for our U.S. folks, and, they may not have transportation to go to these hospitals, right? And so by not being involved in that, your data is not collected. And when you build these innovations off these large data sets, right, they're making generalizations, these models, right, about this data. And if it doesn't include the population that you care about, that amazing solution is going to overlook them. And so that terrified me. I don't have an answer to it yet, but that problem statement of like, wow, how can we build technology that scales, that represents really a diverse society that we were in? How can I be involved in that? And that's the main driver that I saw data science giving me that ability to address social change and tackle hard systematic societal problems, and specifically at scale. And that's another reason too why I also shift to be more business minded, because, you know, thinking about like business models are really great at bringing products and ideas to scale. They have a proven track record and platform for that. And so that's the direction I decided to go in. And I've been really happy with it so far. But like I said, I'm very flexible. You know, my goal is to solve these large societal problems. If this data science is not the way to do it, I'll happily shift.
I love that you're open to that. You know, a lot of people say, go find your passion. You are actively, as you're talking about this, describing cultivating it. You've got this notion of solving problems at scale, meaningful ones for societal issues like underserved populations. You're around the tech, venture, startup realm, so you're seeing the possibilities of the right business models, and you're making a bet. Your heart is pulling you towards this. You say data science in a certain area makes a lot of sense for me. But I love that you're open to pivoting in the future. You're not saying I need to be on this path and it's for the long haul, but it's directionally, you're going in the right way. You know it. I can feel it as you're talking to me about it. And you can see the potential it has for others, but also for yourself. Because one, there's a lot of purpose and meaning in that. Two, I mean, being in data science for startups is like a good thing for a livelihood, but it's all working out in the right way. So I love that you're testing new passions and bringing it to life, but open to the new possibilities as they might emerge.
Definitely. I think you're spot on with that.
So let's go a little bit under the hood in data science. So I know a lot of our listeners are technically in it. Others are not so familiar with it. We have some folks on the edge, more generalists sometimes. So help us understand, what are some of the maybe non-traditional inroads into data science? You might be one of them, but like, how do you think about different ways that you might get into data science?
Definitely. You know, one of my favorite things about coding is, you know, for context, I think it's starting, the years are starting to go by. I think 4 or 5 years ago, before grad school, I didn't think I was capable of coding. I was like, coding, that's beyond me. And then I was forced to kind of automate something in Google Sheets, which had to require a little bit of scripting. I was like, wait, that's all it is? And I realized anyone can code. It's just a matter of whether or not you like it. And through that, essentially, and why I bring this up is that I genuinely think anyone can become a technical individual if they desire to. Even for data science is a little bit trickier because, you know, for me, even though I come from a non-traditional background, I do have the traditional stats and research design skills from my graduate program. And so that's why you see a lot of people coming from PhDs or masters going to that. But I've also met individuals who've had a bachelor's. People without college degrees, I would argue that if you have the skill set and you can deliver, you can totally do it. Because I think a really cool thing about data science that you can break in, not with your degrees or whatnot, but by showing an awesome portfolio of your ability to drive business value through data work. And so I think that's really cool with so people who are not technical background. There's this thing called GitHub, where essentially you can post your code and you can track things. And a lot of people create formalized kind of like, hey, this is the end-to-end project I created. And they'll create like a portfolio. And you can just send that link to a recruiter. And, you know, if you can code really well, or you can solve really interesting problems and explain it really well, you'll get hired. So to give context, like I've been at jobs where we've had interns who are in college still, but not fully graduated. And because they have such strong skills, you know, we brought them in and they decided to work full time as employees because they're like, I'd rather work full time during the pandemic rather than go to online classes and just take a break from school. So again, it's like, it's really open. There's a lot of hard work, but you can have these non-traditional backgrounds. So you don't need to be like a CS or engineer. And if anything, it really adds value because now I come from this different perspective. I don't come from like, strictly like code and technical, like what's the best approach. I'm coming from like a social science researcher perspective on things. And, you know, a big thing of like really building effective teams is having that technical person, having that social science person, having that academia person, having that business person coming together to highlight each other's strengths and fill in for each other's gaps. I hope that was that felt like a kind of esoteric answer to that, but that's a hard one to answer.
Yeah, it is. Let's make it maybe a little bit more tangible based on your own experiences. And I think that was a great starting point there, Mark. So say you got into the job, you're more entry level, you proved the technical skills you needed to get into data science. Once you're in there and as you work your way up the organization, what does proving valuable look like? And like, how do you make your way up, and what are the skills maybe that you would need to do that?
Yeah. I think the most shocking thing when I became a data scientist was how much time is spent not coding or doing like analyses, but being in meetings or communicating with people. And so that's one of the key things, that learning how to communicate and essentially is kind of like getting the requirements for a lot of projects. So one of my huge mistakes I made in my first data science role is that I would get a request and I would immediately start coding and doing the analysis. And two things happened. I delivered it and they're like, this isn't good. Or I was like a couple days before the deadline and realized, oh, the stakeholder meant something else. And I have to restart this and rush it in 2 days. Again, that's not going to be the best work. And so I quickly had to learn to come up with a process. And again, kind of going back to that dead flip analogy is like, okay, let me pause and ask all these questions to really understand and get these requirements of like what's really being asked, and then creating kind of a plan, bringing it back to the stakeholders to say, hey, is this exactly what you want? Getting feedback, iterating again, and then delivering. And so for new people, you know, you're so excited about doing the technology. Like, oh, I'm finally a data professional. I just want to start doing the data. And the reality is, you know, this initial step will take you far in your early career. And I think that's the foundation before you can start even considering the other aspects of like driving value of like, you know, building stakeholder management, identifying where opportunities for the business and various other things. If you can't get that basic thing down, you know, you're gonna have a hard time.
Yeah, that's something I talk to a lot of folks in tech about, whether it's, you know, data science or cyber folks. It's like you get your foot in the door with the technical discipline, but then you quickly need to understand how business works. You need to be able to zoom out and understand the whole system at play, especially like you said, the stakeholders, what they care about, what their pains and priorities and hopes and dreams are. And you start to empathize with that. Then you have this broader set of knowledge, this context by which to do more of your work. But if you don't gain it, you're not going to get very far. Your solutions aren't going to matter much to them. So I think that's a really smart move to say, zoom out, understand who's who, what they care about. Sometimes it is about the external customer. You've also talked about this online before. Sometimes it's about the internal customer. You have both. You need to understand all of what they care about for you as a, quote, technical person to be relevant with what you're delivering, right?
Definitely. And I think that's one of the unique things about data science is that it requires you to have business domain expertise and technical expertise. And you really have to strike that balance for a lot of things. And so a kind of framework I've kind of developed to help me go through this process that derive from these experiences of messing up and then also learning. I call it the TRIBE framework, which stands for talk, requirements, iterate, build, and evangelize. And I really go through that process of talking. So like I mentioned before, talking to the stakeholders, building out those requirements. After I build out those requirements, iterating with the stakeholders, like what do we really want to sign off? Finally building it. And then I think a lot of people forget this aspect of it. It's like, once I complete it, it's not done. I need to evangelize and make people understand that this is a solution that they want and they want to adopt either internally or externally. And I need to think critically about how I communicate that to others. And not always at the end. Sometimes it starts with the talk in the beginning. And so this is the evangelized piece. And that's how you get your solutions really adopted. And therefore they see like, oh, that individual built the solution, everyone's using it. Versus that person built it, that's cool. And it gets archived.
Yeah. Yeah. Too much of this good stuff becomes shelfware if you don't do all that follow through work about evangelizing it, getting people excited about it, understanding the use cases for how it'll work so that they can see how it'll work for them too. Yeah.
So I spend a lot of time. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead. It's fine.
I was going to say, I spend a lot of time with my manager discussing how I roll out a solution internally, whether it's lunch and learns, demos, kind of like Slack media campaigns, to really figure out who's the key stakeholders I need to show this off to and get them excited, and therefore bring out to the broader community.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. So that is a good example, I'd say, of working within your organization, within those four walls, how to make stuff happen. There's this big movement, I'd say, in the last few years, and you're a great example of it, on bringing ideas on the outside too. And sometimes that affects what happens on the inside of your organization. So we met through LinkedIn, kind of Definitely. In the creator space. We're both putting out their content. We have a lot of overlap, I think, in our beliefs and who we're trying to serve and why. So I'm so thankful to have met you and be able to do this together today, Mark. But would love to understand, say from a LinkedIn perspective, what's been your strategy on that? What's the whole creator concept for you?
Definitely. So the biggest thing is that, beyond just a follower count, which the follower count really doesn't mean much. It's what value you can provide to your followers and the value you can get back from them. Because you're building this relationship, and it's not transactional. You're really building a relationship with this community that you're cultivating. And so through that, I have roughly right now like 8,000 followers. And to me, that's like 8,000 mentors. Because I can really now have that asset where like I put in a lot of value into those mentors. And when I ask questions or need help, they come back and like help me out. And this happened recently where this week I was trying to explore technology like, hey, I'm thinking about this paradigm for using this technology to update our whole system for the data science team, but I'm not really convinced this is the right way. Here are my thoughts. I put out a poll and then I asked for people to give me feedback. And I had like a whole bunch of comments giving me the pros and cons of this approach. And I realized ultimately my idea was wrong. And therefore it saved me a whole bunch of time and a whole lot of headaches at my job. Simply because I was able to go outside of my job, ask these questions, and really get these mentors and experts to really weigh in. And that's something I couldn't have done by myself, just searching through documentation, which I did before, and I still had many questions. So that's why, leveraging your network as an asset, right? And the key thing is that you have to build that community where people want to engage with you.
Yeah, I can see the value of that for sure. 8,000 mentors is a great way to put it. And let's not sell yourself short. I don't think you were, but I want to say you put in a lot of work to develop those 8,000 mentors. That's a lot of heart, soul, time, blood, sweat, tears. Call it what you want. But there's a lot that goes into bringing that to life. How did you get to that point? Not many of the people listening to this have 8,000 followers on LinkedIn or whatever platform they're using. What are the big steps you went through to bring that to life?
Definitely. And one thing I want to like make clear is that I started getting value when I only had a few hundred. And so again, it's not the follower count. It's just that now I have a wider breadth of people, experiences to draw upon. And this became clear to me over a year ago. And this is how I started on LinkedIn. In the middle of the pandemic, I was laid off. And essentially, I did something kind of different. Instead of applying to jobs, I said, you know what? I'm going to create my own sales funnel for my own services to sell to a company to get employed, right? And through that, I was going to create content on LinkedIn. And my goal is to make one post every single day that gave value to one person. And through that content, it'll highlight kind of my experience and my ability to communicate, as well as my passion for the topic that I'm trying to be hired in. And through that, I got multiple interviews. I got a job offer for my current place that I work at now. And that really highlighted to me the power of LinkedIn. And since then, I've been posting consistently, first once a week. And then now I post every single weekday. And now it's like a habit where if I don't post, I'm like, oh, something's off. I really built up this habit. And again, the main focus is how can I provide value to at least one person with every single post? And it's really changed my career for the better. I'm starting to meet some of these friends in person now that the world's opening up again, which is really wild to think. A lot of them have helped me out in my career where I have one-on-ones with them. And I'm like, hey, I'm struggling with this one aspect in my data career. You've gone through this before, and just have a one-on-one session with someone who really just guide me on like, these are the mistakes I made. These are successes I've had. If I was in your situation, this is what I would do. And I was like, great, I don't have to figure this out myself. Let me just apply your lessons. And so, for me, it's a huge asset to my career. to build up this community, an emphasis on community, because I help them and they help me. Sometimes it feels it's lopsided because they help me so much.
Yeah, I've seen you doing that out there. It's a really beautiful thing. I mean, your posts are genuinely about different things, whether it's teaching something very technical or specific. Sometimes it's inspirational. Sometimes you're asking questions that maybe others are afraid to ask, and that's helping them at the same time. But leading by putting yourself out there, creating content, one, you get a lot of value out of that, but you're affecting countless people, not only your followers, but all those lurkers in the background that are not posting or doing anything, right? They're the passive ones being, wow, I can use that. Mark just gave me something really valuable. Or they sift through the comments. They're like, wow, look at all this gold. You participate here. It's free as long as you're engaging in it, right? The community aspect, definitely, I think, is really important there. I love that.
And so for people who are like, wow, I don't have that many followers. How can I even get this asset myself? You can totally leverage other people's who are bigger accounts. And so you can think of these bigger accounts as community builders. And so, and I'm not saying go to my account. There's plenty of other amazing accounts, wherever your interest is in, is when they make a post, leave a thoughtful comment and engage with the community, because then you're basically leveraging their reach to get access to their community to help you out.
Yeah, network effects, so powerful. So let's pivot a little bit. We've talked about your data science career. We've talked about how content creation helped you and is still helping you, and why it's a huge thing for you into the future, and why we should all take that seriously. Let's talk about entrepreneurial ambition, right? So you've started, I think in the last year, your own piece with On the Mark. Would love to help if you could give our audience an understanding of what is On the Mark. What's that business about? What are you trying to serve with it?
Yeah, so it's On the Mark data. And essentially, it's a side hustle that kind of came about because people wanted the service. Through my content creation, I had a lot of people come into my DMs. I was like, hey, let's collaborate on this and let's collaborate on that. And one time I had a meeting with one and I was like, cool, this sounds like a great project. And they asked, well, what do you want in return? And I never even thought that was even possible. It was just wild to me. Like, wait, I was just planning on doing this for free, but like, you actually want to pay me for this? This is okay, cool. And this happened enough where I was like, okay, I need to take this serious. People want to give me money for this expertise I've built up. Expertise, not expert. I want to make that very clear. But this, the skill set that I've really built up. And so I was like, all right, I'm going to create an LLC and create a whole brand around this to facilitate this ability to do this. And so where I've kind of settled on is doing content creation for others. So it's a lot of ghostwriting or technical writing because I have the coding skills. I understand the space, but also I can write well from my background, sociology, and just writing all the time. I do L&D, so learning and development, where I create Python courses. So I did a project with like Super Data Science, where they're like a large platform to teach students. So I create a whole Python module for them and help teach their students for things. And then I also do, I'm trying to build this out, but it's still a learning process. Is like, how can I start doing data strategy consulting for startups? And that mainly arose from the fact that I have a lot of friends in startups and they'll invite me and we'll always end up chatting about data and I'll give them advice on things. And many times the conversation is like, hey, we want to do machine learning. And I'm like, no, you don't. Actually, here's a lot more simpler things you can set up for a foundation so you can do machine learning later, right? And so again, how can I create a service out of that? And so it's very fluid. It was more so something that came out of just my work constantly happening and making that available. But I'm about 5 months in, things are starting to become clear about like, all right, who's my market? Who am I targeting? And I'm going to be really reshifting my services over time to really reflect that. So I think moving forward, I'm really going to lean in heavy in the ghostwriting camp because I go to a lot of machine learning, data science meetups now that the world's starting to open up a bit. And when founders find out I do that, they're like, they get really excited. And so that signals to me, I'm like, oh, there's a need in the market for this. And people are willing to pay pretty well for this. So yeah, and I enjoy it. So let's do it. And the other part is, and actually let me pause right there. I want to make sure before I go into another tangent about this, if you have any questions about that.
No, I love it. Makes a lot of sense. So you've got the data science journey inside in the corporate space, and like a lot of our listeners at this point, they're often feeling like, what more can I give? How can I diversify my career? And you're a perfect example of this. You spun out your own LLC. You're testing the waters in some new related but separate disciplines, right, to complement what you're doing on the corporate side. And in addition to that, with the community building on LinkedIn, you're laying the foundations. You're planting a lot of seeds out there, and you're going to see what sprouts, what interests might take place, what relationships and opportunities come your way. And like you said before, you're agile, you're fluid with all this. Who knows where you're going to go, but you're placing some bets, making a lot of sense.
That's definitely it. And one of the key things is that this is actually the fourth business I've tried starting. And to give content, and this is the first business where I've actually made money. So, making my first dollar is probably one of the most exciting things in my career so far. And to give an idea, so I was at Stanford. I tried building a med tech startup, failed completely, learned a lot. Second thing, I tried starting a drop shipping business online for formal wear for men, for like weddings in the office. I started that February of 2020, and then the pandemic happened. And so that stopped. I tried building another startup with a bunch of co-founders. We built like an MVP, and we're trying to like sell to customers. It was like pharmacy tech. We applied to like Y Combinator and got to like the interview rounds and stuff like that. And we're talking to investors and realized, this idea is really not worth it. Let's stop that, right? So those are three businesses I've tried, and if anything, I've lost money on. Here comes this opportunity of, all right, here's this, let me try again. I've taken all these lessons learned from the previous three ones, and now like I've been much more intentional on how I use my time, how I target people, how do I communicate. And I think the key lesson I want to get out of this is that each one is just a learning opportunity. So I really, even though it's a side hustle, I don't really see it as like this business that needs to grow. I just see it as like a learning opportunity, a stepping stone for me to see like, what does a successful business, small business look like? And how can I leverage that into the next kind of venture-backed business I want to pursue in the future? And so this is all just kind of subsidizing my learning. I figured out a way to have an LLC and people pay me to learn about the space I want to innovate in.
Oh, makes a lot of sense there. So you just hinted at wanting a venture-backed business in your future. Can you paint a picture on what those dreams look like?
Definitely. So I think one of the key things, and again, being around Stanford and seeing that it's possible, I think the first thing is just knowing that it's possible. And for me, this really clicked when, and for context, like my parents don't do this type of stuff. Like my mom works for the state. My parents didn't graduate from college. So like this is a whole new world to me. And so I remember I was grabbing dinner with a friend, and he was interning at, I think, DLA Piper, which is like some law venture capital firm. And essentially he's like, Mark, I just left a meeting where they wrote a $1 trillion check. And let's re-edit that again. I don't think it's trillion. I think it's $1 billion check. So let me rephrase that. Should we restart real quick? So my friend told me like, hey, Mark, I just left a meeting where they wrote a $1 billion check. And to keep it for perspective, for venture capital, they're typically working with like a lot of pension funds. So there's or country accounts or wherever it may be. So there's big checks happening, and I didn't even think that was possible. And when we had that conversation, I was like, oh my gosh, there's so much out there. I'm not competing with people. Like there's so much out there. Why can't I get a piece too? and more importantly, how can I get a piece of that to leverage that money to solve these large problems that I care about? And so for me, this pursuit of venture-backed business isn't about the scale in the sense of like, I want some big cash payout, because statistically, like that is very unlikely. most startups fail to start, as I know. And to get to the next level is like a fraction each time, where from Series A, Series B, Series C. What I'm really kind of passionate about is like, I'm obsessed of like, how can you create systems and models to take a solution, an idea, and scale it and leverage other people's money to solve these big problems. And that's where I'm really obsessed with, because I see a lot of like serial entrepreneurs where they figure it out and then they repeat the process over and over again. I have friends who've done this. And it's just really fascinating me of like, once you figure out that process and figure out that skill set, it becomes less of, how do I solve this problem? And more so, how do we find the right people and resources to solve these problems? And that's what I'm really focused on, is like building that skill set to find the right people, acquire the right resources, and create the correct system to solve large scale problems in our world.
I can see how your journey and all the pieces as you got into data science, what you're doing within corporate, you're doing on the side, these are all foundational experiences, mindset, and skill set that are going to lead towards what you're wanting to do there. Makes a lot of sense. You're going to need all of this. You're going to need the relationships, the know-how, the understanding of business models, how capital works, all of that. It's going to, I have no doubt in my mind it's going to end up there for you.
I appreciate it. So, so going back to my previous statement of like, I have this end goal, and everything I do is tied towards how can I be equipped to solve large scale problems. And I'm still learning. I'm so young, I may be 50, 60, 70 when I figure this out, but I'm really committed to really make a change in our world for the better.
Yeah, I can see that. That is a clear thread, solving large scale problems. We're going to make sure that shines brightly when we put this out there to the audience. So thank you. One other thing I wanted to bring up related to your journey, and it's new. So you and I both have a shared passion on Web3. We won't go into all the details of what that is, but it includes things like crypto and NFTs and decentralized apps. And one of the items that's a part of that is decentralized autonomous organizations. And you've got your feet wet. Would love to, if you could just give everyone a view of what is a DAO, a DAO, what is that? And then what are you getting into right now?
Yeah. So I'm still super new to this space. So don't take my word as truth. Take it as someone learning, right? I think that's the theme of a lot of my content in general. But essentially is, my friend, Carlos Mercado, he's on LinkedIn. I'm, again, building relationships via LinkedIn. He is a data scientist that got really into decentralized finance. So much that he wrote a book on it, he created a newsletter on it, and he shifted his career from data science consulting to actually quitting his job and investing fully in building decentralized finance apps. And I've been following his journey, and I've been talking to him about this and reading his content, and it just made sense to me of what our future could look like with decentralized finance. And I want to really separate that from cryptocurrency and speculating, but more so thinking about blockchain, how essentially that can change how we use technology, right? And that's what he really focused on because he has an economics background. And so a DAO essentially is, the way they describe it is a group chat with a bank account. And so you essentially grab a bunch of people and you incentivize them to do work in a decentralized way for a project. And so through that, you're able to get assets like tokens. And for example, a token would be hey, thanks for writing this newsletter for us to present to our people interested in this space. Here's 10 tokens, right? And the idea is that as your popularity of this group grows, so does the value of those tokens. So a great example of this in the real world is the DAO called Friends with Benefits. And essentially it's a social DAO where you join this group and you're able to access various events and access various different things. And so initially you just had to buy 70 tokens, and tokens were only $10. So $700 to join this kind of little social club online that was really fun and of like-minded people. Well, it became so popular that they even got venture capital investment, and now each token's worth $200. So now you have to pay, hopefully I can do quick math in my head. Here's a data scientist without calculator. $14,000 to join this group. And so if you're early in there, your $700 in tokens turn into $14,000 just for adding value to this group. And so it's this idea of you can essentially join a group that you're passionate about, work collectively and be incentivized to improve it as a community. And from there, everyone involved can reap the benefits, not just the top person who would create the group. And so, that's very high level and doesn't go into the intricacies of Web3. So if you're listening to this and you're like, what does this even mean? I get it. I was totally there. I kind of still feel there. But, because I felt that way, but it seemed really interesting, I was like, there's only one thing I got to do. I have to join one and figure it out for myself. So when my friend said, hey, Mark, I'm starting a DAO. It's called CharlieDAO. do you want to join? I was like, yeah, of course. And so essentially his group, the way he's structured is like, I want to bring a whole bunch of really talented business people, Web3 people, NFT creators, data scientists, analytics folks, software engineers, just bring them together into a group and see what happens. Let's create these chats. Let's have these kind of like online collisions where people are sharing ideas. And when you share an idea and it gets traction, we'll turn into an active project and we'll start building and see if we can monetize it. And so that's what's happening. So it started about roughly a month ago. I was one of the first people to join. And now it's one of my favorite things because now I'm in this space and I get to talk to other people about Web3, crypto, and more importantly, get to talk to people who are way more advanced than me. And so I learn by doing and talking. So I'm just in this space reading all the resources posted. I'm sharing ideas of like what a Web3 approach to a solution would be and getting feedback on those ideas to improve my kind of understanding. And also I have this analytics skill, so I can provide that asset, that skill set to folks who have a different skill set. So it's been really enjoyable. I've been learning so much, and it just gets the wheels turning all the time. So it's been really exciting for me.
And it's the only way that we're going to figure out the possibilities is by getting our feet wet, saying yes to these things. Web3, we'll put in references to this and DAOs so people can understand a little bit more about what it is. But I've seen a lot, whether it's in YouTube videos or newsletters, where people are painting the picture of what a Web3 world looks like, say 10 years from now. And just how your like digital wallet functions and the connectivity to communities and automated opportunities and getting enrolled into jobs just because you have a certain set of features set up in your profile and your avatar. Like, I'm nerding out here for a second with you, but I know you love this stuff. It's immense possibility. And I love one word you said, which is about all the collisions. If you can set yourself up for having some really thoughtful collisions, being in a certain space, whether it's like a certain Discord or elements of LinkedIn or joining a DAO like you have, Mark, these are all going to be amazing opportunities for serendipity. You don't know what's going to come about, but relationships and opportunities will certainly come your way by doing so.
Definitely. 100% agree to that. And for those listening who are kind of new, or maybe it's the first time hearing it, I think a great analogy of like how I feel about this is that it kind of feels like the .com boom, and there was a crash. And so, but there's this excitement, a new way of thinking about how to do work, how to engage online, even be online, right? And so there's going to be a lot of fluff out there, 100%. But that doesn't change the fact that the things that did survive out of that greatly change our society. And I feel it's going to be a similar way. And for me, it's more so, how can I learn about this space? So that way I can be kind of an innovator. Again, trying to solve big societal problems. And if this is going to be a new framework to do that, I want to be there early to understand it.
Keep leading the way. I can see exactly how this fits into your grand vision. Do you mind if we take a right turn and do a little bit of rapid fire questions?
Of course.
All right, sweet. All right, let's have some fun with this one, Mark. First question is, what's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Oh, man. What's the best piece of advice I've ever received? Oh, this is going to be edited out because I'm pausing so much for rapid fire.
Yeah.
I think the best piece of advice I received, what's really funny is, my first job in tech, we had this speaker come in, who was like this Laszlo Bach. And essentially gives advice of like, be willing to try new things early in your career and try out a whole bunch of things as you see me doing right now. Fast forward, my current job, Laszlo Bach is the CEO, and it's outside of healthcare. And the reason why I took it was because I thought of his advice of like, well, let me try something outside of healthcare in this tech space of like kind of behavior change for data products. And so that's really stuck with me. And it was like years ago, and it came really full circle. So constantly trying new things and biasing towards action is really gonna, people get stuck like, what's my passion? What's my purpose? I don't know mine fully. It's just I constantly try new things and I learn a little bit more every single day and it becomes clear.
Makes a lot of sense, and you're a living embodiment of that. Second question for you. What's the worst piece of advice you've received?
Oh, man. See, the worst piece of advice I received, I think Similar is kind of the opposite of not trying new things. I remember I did this program where I was able to go to the Capitol and talk to legislators about like healthcare reform and whatnot and sciences. And I told this legislator, like, hey, what's your major? And I told them, like, I'm studying sociology. And their quick response is like, why are you doing that? You won't be able to become a doctor or do anything with a sociology degree. And they're trying to convince me out of this degree. And, I think that was the worst advice because my sociology degree has been one of the biggest assets of thinking critically and differently in the space I'm in. And so again, like, don't be scared to try new things or like not the traditional path.
Yeah. That's amazing. Great advice there. Along those lines, so if you were to start your career right now, we're recording at the end of 2021, what advice would you give to yourself?
The beginning of 2021, I think one of the biggest things is learn how to prioritize better. I think I learned that midway through, but in the beginning, I was really burning myself out because I wanted to do everything. As you see, I want to try all these new things. And so, learning how to prioritize really allowed me to zone in and allow me to accomplish crushing it in my day job, being able to start a side hustle, and deliver both at my job and to the point where I was able to get a promotion, but also on the side and deliver projects for clients. And that's because I'm really ruthlessly saying, like, how do I use my time? What can I realistically do and being real with myself? And then committing to like, all right, this is what I'm going to accomplish with my limited time. Instead of trying to do everything and failing at everything.
Yeah, the whole idea of having really sharp filters for what you will do and what you won't do, both work and life, to understand what's possible. We only have 24/7 available to all of us, so we've got to make sure that we're using it super wisely.
And I still don't have it figured out, and that's why I wish I started in 2021, because maybe I'd be a little bit further along.
Yeah, you have the right intent, right? You're going to keep optimizing over time. As long as you know that you've got the right aim, you're going to be good to go. Definitely. So a few wrap-up questions for you, Mike. The name of the show is The Rising Digital Leader, so I like to always ask, how do you rise each day?
How do I rise each day? I think the key thing is, a big trend throughout my content and when I talk to people is I rise by being vulnerable. And that may sound counterintuitive, but I am open to be real with myself every single day of like, what did I do great? What did I do not so great? And come at it in a way where it's not really being down or congratulating myself, but just being from the outside looking in, being really reflective with myself. But more importantly, where the vulnerable piece comes in is that I invite others to come to that space with me and learn with me, where they can provide their feedback and their experiences and kind of create this space. So that's why I do a lot of my content is like, hey, I'm learning here, learn with me. And that really sets me up for success because now I'm always reflecting on how I can improve, how can I have a happier life and have better well-being, whether it's in my career or my personal life. But more importantly is like, I don't need to be this perfect person in front of everyone. It's okay to bring other people to get their advice, and I leverage their advice all the time. And I've noticed that has really helped me excel a lot in the past few years. Yeah,
I can see you living this, at least through LinkedIn. I mean, you're putting out a lot of ideas, but it's not, here is the way. It is, here's a question or here's a thought, would love your feedback. And you are teaching a little bit oftentimes, but you're also got this two-way dialogue that you're opening up, builds community, it teaches people, generates relationships, and you get good feedback on how to make your life better.
Yeah. And I think my goal is I'm trying to be a bridge between people who are way more advanced than me and then people who I'm a more advanced than, and really connect the gap where I can learn from both, where I can teach people, and through teaching I learn a lot and they have lessons as well, but also people who are like way ahead in their career and they teach me a lot. And just creating a space where we can all kind of collide together and share best practices.
Yeah, that's a beautiful way to put it, because we are always that middle dot. There are always people ahead of us and behind us. Recognize that no matter how down you feel on yourself or how unskilled you might be, you are ahead of other people in this world. You know something that others don't. Every conversation you have, you know something that the other person doesn't. I don't care if it's a child talking to a parent, whatever it is, that all makes sense. So I love that mentality. Mark, where can people connect with you more online?
One of the best places is LinkedIn. So Mark Freeman 2 Eyes. That's the best way to find me on LinkedIn. And then on my website, onthemarkdata.com. And I believe we probably have some links that we can share for people. And again, like, feel free to reach out. My DMs are starting to get a little more filled lately, so it's harder to catch people. But some of the best places is commenting on my posts and engaging there, because I really try to make an effort when I can to comment back and leave thoughtful posts and continue the conversation. And also, if you tag me in your posts and you want me to get feedback, I really love commenting on other people's posts as well, because I think it's a win-win for everyone. And I think that's a really great way. It's like, let's have these open conversations so everyone can learn at the same time.
Wonderful. And what closing message, if any, would you like to leave with our audience, Mark?
Yeah. I think something that's been really top of mind for me recently is the importance, and kind of bring a full circle to our first question about pinball, is the importance of slowing down. I realized a lot of the mistakes I've made is when I want to move too fast. I want to start a business too quickly, or I want to be done with grad school too quickly, or I want to accelerate, and I put everything behind me and just focus and trying to move really fast. And what I realized is that by moving too fast, I don't get to be intentional with my time. And therefore, I miss out on the really important things like my family, my health, what's going to help elevate my career in a meaningful way. And so by slowing down, and I don't have it figured out, and I'm still learning, but I'm getting better at slowing down every single day. And what I'm realizing is that I have a lot more energy. I feel a lot more fulfilled. And, I can achieve a lot more in this space than when I was trying to rush. And so I think give yourself permission to slow down and being okay with being patient when things aren't happening as quickly as you like.
Couldn't have said it better. That's a wonderful closing message. Mark, this has been awesome today. I think your journey is super inspirational. I love how fluid you are and open to new ideas, that you're testing new things, whether it's entrepreneurial work, getting into Web3, you're building community, you're generating all these network effects that I know are benefiting you, but you're generating so many benefits for other people too. Probably folks you'll never even meet at this point. There are many people that are benefiting from it, so keep that up. I think this has been a great conversation. We'll make sure that we get out all these pieces to the audience. Let's stay connected as we both grow. Thanks for the time.
That sounds great. No, this is so fun. Thanks for having me.
This is your host, Matthew Doan. Thank you for listening to the Rising Digital Leaders Show. Again, my mission is to help you elevate your career as a digital leader and live a thriving life. I hope this episode sparks new thinking and helps you take meaningful action in your world. If you enjoyed the experience, I'd be so grateful if you subscribed and left a 5-star review. That's it for now. Until next time, my friends, stay virtuous.